changing gears, man. What's the difference between doing a bid in the feds and doing a bid in Lawton?
Uh, Doing a bit in Lawton, right? No matter what happens when you as you go through, right? Uh, if you have a strong supporting cast, right? You may get into some brotherhood and some unity, but overall, your bid in Lawton is going to start out as every man for itself because we all at home.
Right.
So, and not for a person to read too much into that, but I'm just saying that if you're doing things in the streets, right? Like, let's face it, the DC Superior Court don't prosecute a whole bunch of child molesters, a whole bunch of white collar criminals. Most of the people that DC Superior Court prosecute are people that commit what's called a violent crime. So if you come to jail with a violent crime, that means most times you've done something to someone.
Right.
And if you've done something to someone here, as small as it is here, and especially small as it was here back then, you're gonna run into somebody, family that you done something to, whatever you was into, it's gonna follow you. Lawton actually was another part of DC, just in the fence in Virginia,
exactly.
okay? So with all those things, if you into a whole lot of stuff, that stuff gonna follow you to jail, and it's all at home. Now, no, that's just on the bad part of it. Also during time down low and everything that you're dealing with is still homegrown culture. And what I mean by that, for an example, I'm gonna use myself. I went to prison at 16. If I'd have done all my whole time in Lawton, other than being in prison and meeting a person in a once of a lifetime situation like a Chuck Brown or somebody that came through like that, the epitome of what you're going to meet is going to be a rough, tough gangster, drug dealer, some type of killer, right? Just because of the population is there. Your guys that committed other crimes was already gone to the feds anyway, so you wouldn't be there. So like I met guys in the feds, and it's not the fair part of the question, but I met guys in the feds that had done other things, that had gas stations, that were actually diplomats in other countries. You meet different people in the feds. So in Lawton, if you're not going to expand your mind outside the realm of the prison, you're going to go in a better criminal, right? Or something different that I don't even want to imagine and talk to. But what you're going to run into there is not going to be as much as what you're going to run into in the feds. In the feds, aside from everything else, it's a lot of unity. It's a lot of things that people say that, the homies got problems with this or the homie got problems with that. But for real, you so outnumbered out there, not just physically, but even in culture, right? That you're going to feel some type of unity. And for me, I don't know about nobody else, and I'm speaking about me. Everywhere I went, the home team was strong. And it was guys there that was smarter than me, rougher than me, tougher than me, had more time than me. Like everything that you needed to know was right there. Dudes that knew more religion than me. So that was just what I could pick from where I'm from, right? But me, I'm social, right? So I done met guys from Cleveland, Cincinnati, Houston, Detroit that have done all type of things, right? Not just in the crime world. Before they were incarcerated, they was like you. They serial entrepreneurs. Their father was a minister, owned 20 churches, and they learned how to run businesses from that. So in the feds, you can pretty much. I remember back in the day, when I was younger, we used to aspire to go to the feds and meet a connect.
Good.
That same mentality I took outside of just wanting to meet a connect, because like I went through that earning time. I'd have met a Spanish boy from California. I'd have met a Native American from Nebraska. That's what you do in the feds.
Right.
But I also met people that had publishing companies. I met people that, had clothing companies, and all different type of stuff that some of us do here. And they did it in other places. So I gravitated towards them. And not to mention, I met dudes in there that for real was on the legal level of lawyers, but they committed a crime that they just can't find a way out yet. And I emphasize yet, but they taught me all type of little teeny things that got me out of jail. So that's the difference in doing time in Lawton and the feds. In a quick version of it.
You
know what I
gave
mean?
a great perspective on that. That's a great perspective on that.
I mean, you can open up any door. It depends on what we willing to talk about. It's all type of other things, but in general, I think that's a good way to paint that picture.
Because I always want my audience just to get a real good vision. You know what I'm saying? I know you're capable of describing that. Who coined the name and who came up with the name DC Blacks? When did that come about?
Man, to be honest with you, I can't say who did it or when it exactly came, but through my research and my knowledge, right? I want to go back to like the 60s and 70s, and a lot of guys that I talk to, you know, they can go back longer than that, but I can't. But to my knowledge, right, you know, the term DC Blacks really is a derogatory thing, right? It was just something that the feds put on a problem group out of Washington, D.C., and they said that those are the DC Blacks. A lot of guys that was around at the time told me that, you know, they didn't even really respect that, and it was a disrespectful thing. Nevertheless, as my era time came through the prison system and the DC Blacks thing came around, it was something that I just heard, and they called us that.
Okay. Okay.
I can't make it
Right.
too much more
You can't
prettier
pin it
than
down
that,
right. Exactly.
because it definitely was something that was just put on us to categorize us, though. I would say that's the strongest information.
How was you made to stay so focused to write books and multiple books in a hostile situation as far as prison? How was you able to stay focused like that?
Like I said, I started my bid in Lawton and the Wall, which is a lockdown junk. So people say 23-1, but in some of them places it's not really 23-1. Some of them days you don't come out your cell at all, right? So you know, and prison is an institution, and you could become institutionalized, but there are also things, habits, and patterns that you pick up that help you survive. So I think in the beginning of my bid, that I just learned how to shut a lot of things out, because I was in a, you know, when you in them lockdown joints and them tears that go all the way down, down, and down, and down, and you constantly hearing things, you got to psychologically train yourself to be able to deal with that. You still got to pray. You still got to learn. You still got to do your prayer. You still got to be focused. And by the time I got out of Lawton and was in the feds, it was easier to do that when those things was going on, because if I wasn't in anything, and I told you I know how to mind my business, even though some things that was other people's business became all of our business, that's still my business.
Right, exactly.
But I knew how to mind my business, so when there wasn't nothing going on with me, the time that I took to myself, which is what I think kept me sane in prison, I did that time in my cell, and that became reading and writing. That became me plotting what I thought I would be able to, you know, put into effect if I ever got out of prison. So,
Exactly,
you know, that's
exactly.
pretty much what I was doing. I'm not gonna call it tunnel vision, because I socialized. I'm always moving and grooving and meeting people everywhere I go. But when it came down to planning what I consider would be my future, because I wasn't planning not to get out of prison. I wasn't planning to be in prison forever, even if they said I was. I'm not gonna plan for that. And if I planned for that, my behavior would have been different.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? In my mind, I know I'm dealing with what's happening right here, but tomorrow will be a different day. I can't accept it no other way. So that's how I think I stay focused.
Okay. One of the most questions I get asked from people all around the country, they always say, "Man, I heard every charge in DC is federal." Can you speak to that for the people?
Man, I've been in some legal conversations all week. All right, this is what I'm gonna say. DC is a federal district. Before DC Superior Court was created, which was created in the 70s, the only court in DC was the United States Federal Court. So that means that every law in DC was a federal law. It was codified in federal law, U.S. code, every law. And if you had a little boy charge, even when some of our legendary gangsters came along that committed crimes like armed robberies, murders, kidnapping, those are little boy charges in the scheme of big laws. You understand? I ain't calling nobody a little boy, but they went to what was called a court of general sessions, a U.S. federal court, which still stands. In order to separate those two, your riffraff from what you consider your white-collar crimes, your more important crimes, because in the scales of levels of courts, the highest court in the land is the United States Supreme Court. The second highest court in the land is the United States Appeals Court for the District of Columbia. The United States Attorney Office, who prosecutes crimes or any litigation in those buildings, is the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. By the time the Superior Court of the District of Columbia was created in 1970 something, the office that prosecutes crimes in that building is the United States Attorney's Office. I was indicted in the District of Columbia, and the person's name on the top of my indictment was Eric Holder, because he was the United States Attorney. So therefore, if you commit a crime that's a crime other than a misdemeanor in the District of Columbia, because Carl Racine only prosecutes misdemeanors, juvenile crimes, and something else under there. If you commit a felony in the District of Columbia, you prosecuted by the United States Attorney's Office. So I will argue that every crime that you commit in here, whether they say it's a federal crime or not, is a federal crime. And the judges from the D.C. Superior Court are also paid by the United States Justice Department. So you're going to have to show me something different than that to say that they not feds. If they not feds, they quasi-fed laws. But they fed laws, and the laws that are in D.C. Code were parallel to federal laws. So even if they not called federal laws, they was made off of them. And they just had a big article in the Washington Post about an overhaul of the D.C. Code because it hasn't been changed in 100-some years, according to that newspaper article. If that newspaper article is correct, and I'm taking you back to the creation of the D.C. Superior Court, then I would say that everything is federal, even if we don't say it.
Okay. Explain to the people what is the IRA Act?
The IRA Act is the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act. What it does is that the United States Supreme Court has deemed and agreed with science that young people's mind is not fully developed until around 24, 5 years old. Some specialists say 26. But for sure, if you was a juvenile and you committed your crime at that age, which is for IRA, the first IRA, which was only for guys that was under 18, 17 and under. If you had done 20 years, you could come back. IRA 2.0, which is another thing. Shout out to Charles Allen and Kenya McDuffie and everybody else that played a role in that. Forgive me if I'm missing somebody, right? But specifically when I got aware of it, Kenya McDuffie name was in there. And they was aware that DC had given a bunch of time to juveniles, and we may have committed some heinous acts because I came in that same era. And they was trying to correct that with this IRA. So shout out to them for that. But nevertheless, the IRA 2.0 came out, which lowered that number to 15 years. So if you committed your crime and you were under 18 and 15 years, if you made some progress in prison, you have an opportunity to get resentenced. And then they came with a 3.0, which is basically going to affect guys. It's already affecting guys from the ages of 18 to 24 that committed crimes. And again, like I said, the United States Supreme Court just stamped this and said that it's physically and biologically proven that the brain doesn't stop developing or is not completely developed at this stage. So, that's something to kind of correct some of them wrongs that went into effect with a lot of them laws from the 90s that were draconian and that was meant just to punish anyway. You know what I mean? Exactly. I mean, because if you think about all them laws from the 90s, not to get too deep into that, it just locked a bunch of people up, but the murder rate and the violent crime didn't succeed until many years later. So the incarceration of it didn't stop nothing. It just put people away.
Exactly. And shout out to Kenya, man. I'm supposed to get Kenya over too. He definitely played a strong role of pushing, I know some names pushing that through. Right,
but those names that when it came to me, Kenya McDuffie name was in there, Charles Allen name was in there. I mean, shout out to Trayon White and Tony Lewis and other people that pushed it. But when the guy sent it to me, a guy from prison schooled me to it, I wasn't even aware of it.
Yeah, Tony, I ain't want to miss you, man. We know you played a role in that also, man.
Shout out to Tony. Don't leave my man Slug out.
And also, also I want to give shout out to guys like Michael Plummer.
That's my man,
Lil Pete.
All them guys.
All those guys, man. They really making the laws, making the best of the law. Let me say that. You know what I'm saying? Them guys already got out on those same laws, and they doing the Harleen. You know what I'm saying? Another person is coming up here. So
all that whole crew.
Yeah, exactly, man. All that
whole crew. Most of those guys are guys that showing, that the law was not only was it effective, right, for them and their families, but some of the things that they doing, and I don't want to miss none of them because it's over 60 of them. It's over 60 of them. You know what I mean? But for those guys that you mentioned, right, they have allowed spotlights to be placed on them to say, yo, we are doing this, but in the process of that comes scrutiny, right? And with that scrutiny, they still showing that, I'm taking advantage of it, I'm doing the best of it, I'm helping, I'm assisting. You know what I mean? Even if they remember, even if they only help one youngin' that went through what we went through, that's worth everything that they did to go through what they went through.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? So, shout out to them. Like I said, it's over 60 of them. We mentioned some of the ones we know, but there's a bunch of guys that's doing a lot of that work right there that benefited from the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act.
Out the park, niggas know me. Curtbone, little homie. All days. Been a road.
Look, man, make sure y'all log on to Curtbone TV. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Share it with a friend. I'm going to keep on bringing y'all interesting content, interesting interviews. I'm going to even let y'all think of topics to give me that we can talk about. I'm going to start going live. But what I need y'all to do is hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications, share it with a friend. Remember, Curtbone TV.